So a topic that has come up recently in some discussions that I've been having with people in my life is around this idea of taking on other people's emotions. And I guess I don't know 100% if that's even possible, if we can actually do that. But I guess in my own life, I have had that experience of feeling like I have done that. Or at least I've had the idea that I'm doing that because, like I said, I'm not 100% sure how that works exactly. But this feeling of kind of absorbing and mediating and maybe feeling things that other people are unwilling to feel. I guess another experience that I think is quite common that I've had, and I think is common for people to have, is to feel really sensitive to other people's emotions and like feel really tapped into other people's emotions. And I think for me that really resulted in, I mean, my idea that's what I was doing resulted in feeling really drained by being around people a lot. Like I was definitely one of those people that like needed my alone time and needed to sort of like recover from being around people a lot, or felt just kind of tired and drained from that experience. And I mean, there's a lot of, I think, talk out there in the world around empaths, and people sort of seem to identify with that kind of state. And I guess they're all kind of similar ways of describing maybe a similar kind of experience that we can have in the world, which is feeling like very affected by other people's emotional states. And really, of course, this is going to stem back to childhood experiences that we have, and needing to stay safe. And I think the way that people who feel that developed that strategy was around attunement and not feeling safe. I mean, on an emotional level, it's not necessarily that you're in like a overtly dangerous or threatening environment, but on an emotional level, there were like needs not getting met, and that felt threatening. And especially a lot of unpredictability around emotions, I think, is very threatening for a child, when there's sort of things there sometimes and then not other times. Like an unpredictability with emotions can create a lot of like a threat for the child. So I think a strategy that many of us have adopted is this attunement to other people, so we can know what the threat might be before it even happens, and kind of also modulate ourselves to be in alignment with the person who we might find threatening, to make sure that then it's nothing that we're doing is going to trigger some sort of reaction that's going to create unsafety for us. So we've kind of learned this hyper attunement as a survival safety strategy in the past, and then as adults we're sort of walking around in the world doing the exact same thing. So walk into a room and we're automatically sort of reading the room, and this is all happening probably mostly, maybe there's some aspect of us that could be aware of like, oh, I feel, like aware of how we may be like scanning a space, but also we could be 100% not aware of that. And then there's this thing of taking responsibility for other people's feelings, which I think is a variation of this same kind of theme. And again, I think, it's about boundaries. It's about boundaries being a sense of self, really, and feeling like we can actually be ourselves around other people. Because I think this thing of feeling drained, or that it's a lot to be around other people, is kind of these two things happening. One is we're not feeling safe to actually be ourselves, so we're sort of always modulating ourselves to stay safe, like we're changing our behavior, or we always have this awareness of how I'm going to be received or perceived by the people around me. So there's this sort of hypervigilance, which is bloody tiring. And then also this kind of, I mean, it's the same thing, this kind of attunement then to other people's emotional states, which is away from ourselves and is also really tiring. So it's a strategy for staying safe, but it's not a sustainable one, and it's also not creating relationships in our life that are real, because we're abandoning ourselves basically to attune and be in alignment and confluence with the people in our life, to avoid conflict and rejection, or whatever the things that we're afraid of, confrontation, or but it's not like we can't be in real relationship with someone unless we can really bring who we really are to that relationship. And then it's a question of like, how can I be in responsible relationship with this person rather than being responsible for them and their feelings, because that's also a complete disservice to that person. If we feel like it's my role, I need to feel things for them because they can't do it, or or we're just doing this unconsciously. Maybe we're not actually having that thought, but it's something that we just keep kind of defaulting to. Like, we need to really become more present to that and realize that it's a disservice to ourselves, to the other person, and to actually forming a relationship with that person, which is probably the thing that we actually want. Because if it's not, then we could just not have them in our life anymore. But if there's someone in our life, maybe it's family and people who are like in our life because it's family, not necessarily like friends that we're choosing to be in relationship with. And with family, it's a big one because that's where these patterns began. So they're probably, the most difficult in a way to really shift. But that whole dynamic of taking something on for someone else is putting them in this kind of victim hero dynamic where you're actually not giving them the respect and the dignity to say, yeah, there's a lot here to feel and I'm with you and it's yours. It's yours to feel. It's yours to choose how you want to live your life. It's yours to choose to come into a relationship with me if that's what you want. And this is, what I'm bringing to it, and this is who I am, and this is my needs in a relationship. And is that what you can agree to? Is that something that you can show up for? And what, and I'm here for, like, what are your needs, and what are you feeling, and who are you? And it's only when we can really kind of do this individuation process, especially when it comes from our family and our parents, and this sort of enmeshment that some of us might find ourselves in an emotional level. It's really a process of boundaries, which is a process of self-individuation and self-knowing who we really are. And maybe that ability to tune into other people's, what they're feeling, can be a superpower, but we need to be super conscious of when we're choosing to do that and when we're choosing to not do that. Because if we're not choosing, then it's just running on this complete default pattern and we're exhausted and we have crappy relationships probably. Or we're frustrated with our relationships because they're not really changing. But here we are showing up with the same dynamic and the same pattern and this feeling of like doing things for other people, taking more responsibility for the relationship, and it's not going to produce fruitful results. Like, maybe other people need to feel the level of pain that they're really at in their life to choose then to actually do something different. If we're kind of always modulating and mediating and kind of making it okay for them to continue in their dysfunctional way, then we're essentially enabling like their dysfunction. And then we get frustrated and upset when they're not showing up differently to the relationship. So then we can really ask ourselves, like, what's my responsibility? What's mine? What are my feelings? Who am I? What do I need in this moment? And separate out that from the messiness of being enmeshed into other people's emotions and preferences and needs. And then our ability to really communicate that and show up to relationships in that different way, they have to change. I mean, either they might change to the point where it's not going to happen, you won't have a relationship with that person anymore, or it will change into something more stepping in a direction of a true connection, of a true relating to each other. But we can't force people into that, and we can't do it for them, and we have to see our part that we're playing in dynamics. This thing of even that they become the victim and you're sort of heroing them can then flip, and then they become the villain and you're the victim to whatever behavior they're doing that's impacting you in some way. But this whole moving around of those different roles is just continuing the game, continuing the pretense, continuing this pattern. And we can change that. If one side of a dynamic shifts, the dynamic has to shift. And that doesn't necessarily mean that shift is immediately going to be rainbows and unicorns, but it's changing, it's moving, and I think that's always better than a stagnant cycling through the same. So it's really about coming back to ourselves, coming back to our own reactions, our own responses, our feelings, our needs, communicating them, and coming into a responsible relationship with other people. Actually taking responsibility for ourselves, because when we're taking responsibility for everyone else, it's actually just a great way to avoid taking responsibility for ourselves. Much love.